Lucas Grant stood in the main chamber of the Galactic Council and tried not to look impressed. The room was enormous, built to hold representatives from 200 different species. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing star maps and data streams. Translators buzzed softly in his ear, converting alien languages into words he could understand. He was the first human ambassador to address the full council. Earth had joined the galactic community only 6 months ago, and most species still knew very little about humanity. Lucas could feel thousands of eyes watching him from the curved seating areas that rose up like an amphitheater. Captain Diana Hayes stood beside him, wearing her military uniform. She was his advisor on security matters, a veteran of several Earth conflicts. Her face showed no emotion. But Lucas knew she was taking in every detail of the chamber. The council speaker, a tall insectoid being named Thexal, raised one of his 4 arms. The chamber fell silent. "We welcome the human delegation," Thexal said. His voice clicked and chittered, but the translator made it sound formal and distant. "You are here to observe our proceedings and learn our ways. Please remain silent unless asked to speak." Lucas nodded. He had been briefed on council protocol. New species were expected to watch and learn for at least a year before participating in debates. The main discussion began. 2 species were at war, the Tarvine Collective and the Zoral Empire. They had been fighting for over 100 years. A Tarvane general stepped forward. His species looked almost reptilian, with scaled skin and sharp teeth. "The Zoral have violated sector agreements again," he announced. "They attacked our mining colony in the Helix Nebula. We demand compensation and territory." A Zoral representative responded. Her species was tall and thin with pale blue skin. "The Tarvine fired first. Our ships were in neutral space. We acted in self-defense according to Protocol 15 of the War Accords." The debate continued for nearly an hour. Lucas listened carefully, and what he heard confused him more and more. The 2 species argued about which battle zones were acceptable for combat. They discussed how many civilian casualties were permitted under various circumstances. They debated whether the upcoming engagement should happen on the 3rd or 4th moon of a contested planet. Diana leaned close to Lucas. "Are they scheduling their war?" she whispered. Lucas nodded slowly. That was exactly what it sounded like. The Tarvine and Zoral were arguing about the proper way to kill each other, as if warfare was a sport with rules and referees. The council voted on the matter. The Zoral were allowed to keep their conquered territory, but had to pay a fine. The next major battle was scheduled for 3 months from now, in a designated combat zone. Both sides agreed to limit weapons that might damage nearby trade routes. Lucas felt Diana tense beside him. He knew what she was thinking. On Earth, wars were brutal and desperate. Armies fought to win as quickly as possible. The idea of scheduling battles and following rules seemed insane. After several more hours of discussion, the council moved to a new topic. The Draken Federation requested assistance with raiders from the Korvax clans. The Korvax were a loose group of warrior tribes who survived by attacking weaker species and stealing resources. Thexal clicked his mandibles together. "This matter requires a military solution. The Draken lack sufficient forces to defend their outer colonies. We propose assigning a new species to this task," another council member suggested. "A test of their combat capabilities." All attention turned to the human delegation. Thexal addressed Lucas directly. "Ambassador Grant, would humanity be willing to assist the Drakon Federation? We will provide 3 battlecruisers from the Council fleet. You will command them according to standard engagement protocols." Lucas glanced at Diana. She gave a slight nod. "We would be honored to help," Lucas said carefully. "However, I will need to consult with our military command about the specific approach." "The approach is standard," Thexal said, sounding puzzled. "You will meet the Korvax in the designated battle zone. Engagements will follow the traditional combat accords. Victory is achieved through superior firepower and tactical positioning. I understand, Lucas said. We will review the protocols and respond within 48 hours. The council seemed satisfied. The session ended, and delegates began filing out of the chamber. Diana waited until they were alone in their assigned quarters before speaking. "Did you understand any of that?" she asked. Lucas poured himself water from a dispenser. "They treat war like a business transaction. Rules, schedules, designated areas. It's like they're trying to make it civilized." "War isn't civilized," Diana said flatly. "It's about survival. You do whatever it takes to protect your people and end the threat as fast as possible." Lucas sat down and pulled up the files the council had provided. The traditional combat accords were thousands of pages long. They specified everything from acceptable weapons to proper spacing between ships during battle. There were rules about how long engagements should last, how to treat prisoners, and even how to formally surrender. "This is insane," Diana muttered, reading over his shoulder. "These wars last forever because everyone's following rules. The Tarveen and Zoral could have ended their conflict decades ago if they actually fought to win." "Maybe that's the point," Lucas said slowly. "Look at this data. Military contracts are a huge part of their economies. Warrior species get status and honor from prolonged conflicts. They don't want wars to end quickly." Diana's expression darkened. "So they waste lives to maintain tradition and profit." Lucas opened another file showing casualty reports from various galactic conflicts. The numbers were staggering. Billions had died in wars that could have been resolved through negotiation or decisive action. "We need to talk to Commander Peterson," Diana said. "He needs to know what we're dealing with." They sent a secure transmission back to Earth. Commander Jake Peterson was in charge of humanity's first combat fleet, the ships that would be sent to deal with the Korvax situation. Peterson's face appeared on the holographic display. He was a practical man, someone who had served in Earth's naval forces for 20 years. "I got the Council's briefing," he said. "These protocols are ridiculous. They want us to announce our arrival, wait for the enemy to get into position, and then have a fair fight." "That's exactly what they expect," Lucas confirmed. Peterson shook his head. "That's not how we operate. We don't give the enemy time to prepare. We don't fight fair. We fight to win and minimize our own casualties." "The Council won't like that," Diana warned. "The Council gave us a job," Peterson replied. "They want us to stop the Korvax from raiding Dracon colonies. They didn't say we had to do it their way." Lucas considered the implications. Humanity was new to galactic politics. Going against established traditions could create problems. But following protocols that wasted lives and prolonged conflicts went against everything humans had learned from their own history. "Do what you think is right," Lucas finally said. "I'll handle the political fallout." Peterson grinned. "Get ready for a show, Ambassador. These aliens are about to learn that humans don't play by anyone's rules but our own." The transmission ended. Lucas and Diana looked at each other. "We're going to cause an incident, aren't we?" Diana said. "Probably," Lucas admitted. "But maybe it's time someone showed them there's a better way." He drafted a formal response to the Council, accepting the mission, but including a carefully worded disclaimer. Humanity would resolve the Korvax situation, but could not guarantee full adherence to traditional combat protocols. When he sent the message, Lucas knew there was no going back. Humanity was about to introduce the galaxy to a completely different kind of warfare. One based on efficiency, psychology, and ending conflicts as quickly as possible. Admiral Thexelar of the Dracon Federation watched his tactical display with growing confusion. The human fleet had arrived 3 days ago, and nothing they did made any sense. The Dracon were reptilian beings, proud warriors who valued strength and honor. They had fought the Korvax raiders for 5 years, following all proper protocols. Battles happened in designated zones, ships lined up in formation. Both sides fought until one withdrew or negotiated terms. But the humans ignored everything. Commander Jake Peterson's fleet consisted of 12 ships, smaller than the standard Council battle cruisers, but faster. When they arrived in Dracon space, they did not head for the expected battle zone. Instead, they scattered across 3 different star systems. Thexelar activated his communication link. Commander Peterson, your fleet positioning is incorrect. The Korvax will arrive in Sector 742 in 6 days. Standard protocol requires you to establish defensive formation there. Peterson's image appeared on the screen. He was a human male with short dark hair and calm eyes. Appreciate the advice, Admiral. We're going with a different approach. Different approach? Thexelar felt his scales bristle. The combat accords are clear. You must engage the enemy in the designated zone. The combat accords are your problem, not mine, Peterson said simply. My job is to stop the raids. I'm going to do that my way. The connection ended before Thexelar could respond. On the human flagship, Peterson turned to his tactical officer. Lieutenant Ryan Foster was young but brilliant, with expertise in information warfare. How are we doing with the broadcasts? Peterson asked. Transmitting on all Korvax frequencies, Ryan reported. We're bypassing their military channels and sending messages directly to clan leaders. What are we telling them? The truth. That the Drakon have nothing worth stealing. That we know about the power struggle between the clans. That we have a better offer. Peterson nodded. The humans had spent weeks studying the Korvax before arriving. They were not a unified military force. They were dozens of separate clans, each led by a different chief. The clans competed for resources and status. Raiding was how they survived, but it was also how they proved their strength to each other. Officer Melissa Turner called from the communications station. Sir, we're getting responses. 3 clan leaders want to talk. Put them through. The first Korvax chief appeared on screen. His species was covered in thick fur and had sharp claws. I am Chief Grack. You claim to have an offer better than raiding? I do, Peterson said. You raid the Dracon because you need resources. Food, metals, technology. What if I could give you all of that without fighting? Grack snorted. Nothing is free, human. You're right. Here's the deal. You stop raiding Dracon colonies. In exchange, we establish trade routes between your clan and human merchants. You get steady supplies of everything you need. No risk, no casualties. No expensive ships lost in battle. My warriors would call me weak. Your warriors would call you smart, Peterson corrected. You'll have more resources than the other clans. You'll grow stronger while they waste their strength fighting. In 5 years, your clan will dominate the others. Grack was silent for a long moment. Send me details of this trade agreement. The conversation ended. Melissa looked impressed. Think he'll accept? He's thinking about it, Peterson said. And while he thinks, we work on the others. 2 star systems away, Lieutenant Commander Amy Richardson led a small team on a different mission. She commanded a single stealth ship, equipped with advanced sensors. Target acquired, her pilot reported. Korvax supply depot on the asteroid. Any defensive systems? Amy asked. Minimal. They're not expecting an attack here. Because it violates the combat accords, Amy said with a slight smile. Good thing we don't care about those. Move us into position. The human ship approached silently. They did not attack the depot. Instead, they deployed a series of small drones that attached themselves to Korvax supply ships. Trackers in place, Amy's technical specialist reported. We can now follow every supply movement in this region. Excellent. Let's find their main fuel reserves. The Dracon would have considered this dishonorable attacking supply lines instead of engaging enemy warriors directly. But humans had learned long ago that wars were won by logistics, not just battles. Over the next 4 days, human forces mapped every Korvax supply route, identified their fuel depots, and located their repair facilities. They did not destroy any of it. They just watched and waited. Meanwhile, Peterson continued his negotiations. 2 more clan leaders agreed to trade deals. A third wanted to meet in person. Admiral Thexelar sent increasingly urgent messages. The designated battle was supposed to happen in 2 days. The Korvax fleet was gathering, but the human ships were nowhere near the combat zone. "Commander Peterson, you must move your forces immediately," Thexelar insisted. "The Korvax have 100 ships approaching. If you do not establish defensive positions, the Dracon colonies will be overrun." "Relax, Admiral," Peterson replied. "Everything's under control." "How can it be under control? You are not even in position to fight." "That's because we're not going to fight. Watch and learn." The day of the scheduled battle arrived. The Korvax fleet entered the combat zone, weapons ready, but no one opposed them. The Dracon forces held back, confused. The human ships remained scattered across the region. The Korvax war chief, a massive warrior named Throck, was furious. "Where are the defenders? Where is honor?" His communications officer looked nervous. "Chief, we are receiving multiple transmissions. Several clans have withdrawn from the raid." "What? Why?" "They say they have accepted trade agreements with the humans." Throck roared in anger. "Cowards! We do not trade, we take." But more reports came in. 5 clans had pulled out, then 7, then 10. Peterson opened a communication channel directly to Throck. "War Chief, we need to talk." Throck's face filled the screen, twisted with rage. "You dishonor us! You avoid battle like a frightened prey animal." "I avoid waste," Peterson said calmly. "Your warriors are brave, but bravery doesn't feed your families. It doesn't repair your ships. It doesn't make your clans stronger. Strength comes from conquest." "Strength comes from prosperity," Peterson replied. "Half your clans have already figured that out. They're getting everything they need through trade. No casualties, no damaged ships, no resources wasted on fighting. In a year, they'll be twice as strong as you." Throck hesitated. Peterson pressed his advantage. "You have a choice, War Chief. You can attack the Dracon colonies with half your original force. Maybe you win. Maybe you lose. Either way, you'll suffer losses while the other clans grow richer and stronger through trade. Or you can accept my offer and make your clan prosperous too. You expect me to surrender without fighting? I expect you to be smart. Fighting isn't always the answer. Sometimes the real victory is knowing when not to fight." The transmission ended. On the Dracon flagship, Admiral Thexelar stared at his displays in shock. The Korvax fleet was breaking apart. Ships were turning away, heading back to their territories. Only a small fraction remained with Throck. "What sorcery is this?" Thexelar muttered. His second officer was equally bewildered. "The humans have won without firing a single shot. How is this possible?" "They cheated," Thexelar said. "They ignored all protocols. They negotiated instead of fought. They targeted supplies instead of warriors." "But it worked," the second officer said quietly. 3 days later, War Chief Throck sent a message to Commander Peterson. He was the last to agree, but he did agree. The raids would stop. Trade would begin. The entire operation had taken less than 2 weeks. News spread rapidly through the Galactic Council. Most members were stunned. A conflict that should have lasted months had been resolved in days. No major battles, minimal casualties. The Dracon colonies were safe, but not everyone was pleased. Ambassador Lucas Grant received a summons to appear before the council. When he arrived, the chamber was tense. Council Speaker Thexal addressed him formally. "Ambassador Grant, Humanity's actions require explanation. You violated numerous established protocols. We completed our mission, Lucas replied. The Korvax raids have stopped. The Draken are safe. Isn't that what you wanted? You avoided honorable combat, a Tarveen representative said angrily. You negotiated like merchants instead of fighting like warriors. We ended the conflict quickly and efficiently, Lucas said. Isn't that better than prolonged fighting? The traditional combat accords exist for good reason, another council member argued. They maintain order. They ensure fairness. They give both sides opportunity to prove their valor. Lucas took a breath. With respect, your accords also ensure that wars last as long as possible. They maximize casualties and waste resources. They benefit no one except those who profit from prolonged conflict. The chamber erupted in angry chittering and shouting. Several warrior species stood up in protest. Thexal called for order. Ambassador Grant, you are new to galactic society. You do not understand our ways. I understand that you've been fighting wars the same way for thousands of years, Lucas said. And I see the results. Conflicts that last centuries, billions dead, resources exhausted, all because you follow traditions that benefit no one. Our traditions preserve honor, a Zoral representative said coldly. Something humans apparently do not value. Lucas met her gaze. We value life. We value ending threats quickly so our people can live in peace. If that's dishonorable by your standards, then I guess we're dishonorable. The debate continued for hours. Some species were intrigued by human methods. Others were deeply offended. The council could not reach a consensus. Finally, Thexal raised his arms for silence. This matter requires further consideration. The council will reconvene in 1 week to discuss new protocols for human military actions. Lucas bowed and left the chamber. Diana was waiting outside. How bad was it? She asked. The Galactic Council chamber was packed. Every species had sent representatives, and the gallery seats were filled with observers. Ambassador Lucas Grant stood at the center of the room, knowing that this session would determine humanity's future in galactic society. Council Speaker Thexal opened the proceedings with unusual formality. We are here to address the human approach to warfare. Ambassador Grant, the Council has reviewed your actions with the Korvax situation. While the results were effective, many members question your methods. War Master Krell of the Tarveen Collective rose from his seat. He was a massive being, covered in armored scales, with scars from decades of combat. The humans have shown contempt for traditions that have governed galactic warfare for 10,000 years. They negotiate when they should fight. They target supplies instead of warriors. They avoid honorable combat. We ended the conflict in 2 weeks, Lucas replied calmly. How long would it have taken using traditional methods? 6 to 8 months, Krell admitted. But those months would have allowed both sides to prove their valor. Warriors would have earned honor. The weak would have been culled from both populations. Lucas felt his jaw tighten. You're saying prolonged conflict is good because it kills off the weak? That is the natural order, Krell said. Combat strengthens species. It drives technological advancement. It maintains the warrior spirit. It also kills millions who could have lived productive lives, Lucas countered. A Zoral representative stood up. Her name was General Vera Chen, and she commanded one of the largest fleets in the Empire. Ambassador Grant, your species is new to the stars. You lack perspective. Warfare serves many functions beyond simple victory. It maintains social hierarchies. It provides opportunities for advancement. It gives purpose to warrior classes across hundreds of worlds. Captain Diana Hayes, standing beside Lucas, spoke up for the first time. May I address the council? Thexal hesitated, then nodded. Proceed. Diana stepped forward. I am a military officer. I have fought in 3 major conflicts on Earth. I have lost friends in combat. I have killed enemy soldiers. I understand war from the inside." The chamber fell silent. Even the warrior species listened carefully. Warriors recognized one of their own. "Earth has a long history of warfare," Diana continued. "Thousands of years of combat. We have fought with swords, guns, tanks, aircraft, and nuclear weapons. We have had wars that killed millions in a single conflict. We know what war really costs." She pulled up a holographic display showing images from Earth's history. Battlefields covered with bodies, cities reduced to rubble, refugees fleeing destroyed homes. "These are the results of prolonged warfare," Diana said quietly. "This is what happens when conflict becomes tradition instead of last resort. We learned, through terrible experience, that war should be avoided when possible and ended quickly when necessary." "You speak of avoiding war," Krell said, "but sometimes war is necessary." "I agree," Diana said, "but when war is necessary, you should fight to win as fast as possible. Every day a conflict continues means more dead soldiers, more grieving families, more resources wasted that could feed and house your people." She changed the display to show statistics from galactic conflicts. "The Tarveen and Zoral have been at war for 112 years. In that time, over 40 billion beings have died. How many of those deaths were actually necessary?" General Chen stood up angrily. "Those deaths had meaning. Those warriors died with honor, serving their people." "Did they?" Diana challenged. "Or did they die because your military leadership profits from prolonged conflict? Because warrior cultures need war to maintain their political power? Because your traditions matter more than the lives of your soldiers?" The chamber erupted in angry voices. Warrior species shouted protests. Others called for order. Thexal had to use his authority to restore quiet. "Captain Hayes, you make serious accusations," Thexal said. "I make observations based on your own data," Diana replied. "Look at the economic reports. Military contracts are one of the largest sectors in Tarveen and Zoral economies. Weapons manufacturers, shipbuilders, supply companies, they all benefit from war continuing. The longer the conflict, the more profit they make." Lucas added to her point. "We analyzed the original cause of the Tarveen-Zoral War. It started over mining rights to 3 asteroids. Those asteroids have been completely mined out for 70 years. But the war continues because institutions on both sides depend on it." "That is not true," General Chen said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Then explain why peace negotiations have failed 16 times, Lucas said. "Not because the issues are too complex. The negotiation records show that deals were reached, but they fell apart because military leadership on both sides refused to accept the terms." He pulled up communication records. "Your own generals sabotaged peace talks because ending the war would mean reducing military budgets and losing political influence." The Zoral delegation looked uncomfortable. The Tarveen representatives refused to meet anyone's eyes. A new voice spoke from the gallery. "The humans make valid points." Everyone turned. The speaker was Ambassador Drell of the Hevian Confederacy. The Hevians were a peaceful species, focused on trade and science. They rarely spoke in council debates about military matters. "The Hevian Confederacy has advocated for peaceful resolution of conflicts for centuries," Drell continued. "We have been ignored because we lack military power. But the humans have proven that warfare can be approached differently. They achieved in 2 weeks what traditional methods would have taken months." "Because they cheated," Krell growled. "They adapted," Drell corrected. "They used psychology, economics, and diplomacy. These are not dishonorable. They are intelligent." The debate continued for another hour. Finally, Thexal called for a vote on whether to formally censure humanity for violating warfare protocols. The vote was close. Warrior species voted to censure. Economic and peaceful species voted against. The measure failed by a narrow margin. But then General Chen stood up. The Zoral Empire issues a formal challenge to humanity. We demand that you prove your methods in a real conflict, following proper engagement protocols. Lucas felt his stomach sink. What kind of challenge? A traditional battle, Chen said. Your forces against ours. If you win, we will acknowledge that your methods have merit. If you lose, you will agree to follow the combat accords in all future conflicts. And if we refuse the challenge? Lucas asked. Then the Zoral Empire will impose a trade embargo on all human worlds and encourage other species to do the same. It was a trap. If humanity refused, they would be isolated. If they accepted, they would be forced to fight a traditional battle where the enemy had thousands of years of experience. Lucas looked at Diana. She gave a slight nod. They had expected something like this. We accept your challenge, Lucas said. On one condition. The battle objectives must be realistic, not a demonstration or war game, a real military scenario with real stakes. General Chen smiled coldly. Agreed. The Zoral Empire has been conducting anti-piracy operations in the Outer Rim. Small raider groups attack shipping lanes. You will eliminate these raiders using our standard protocols. We will observe and judge your performance. How many raiders? Diana asked. Approximately 30 ships operating from hidden bases. Our forces would normally take 3 months to clear the region. You will have the same time limit. Lucas agreed to the terms. The council session ended with tension hanging in the air. Half the galaxy was eager to see humans fail. The other half was curious to see if human methods could work under traditional constraints. Back in their quarters, Lucas and Diana met with Commander Peterson through a secure channel. This is a setup, Peterson said immediately. They want us to fail. Obviously, Diana agreed, but we still have to try. What are the specific constraints? Peterson asked. Lucas pulled up the challenge documents. We have to announce our presence to the raiders before attacking. We have to engage them in designated combat zones. We cannot target their supply lines or bases without formal declaration. We cannot negotiate or offer alternatives to combat. In other words, we have to fight stupid, Peterson said. Essentially, yes. Peterson was quiet for a moment. Then he grinned. They said we have to follow their protocols. They didn't say we have to follow them the way they expect. What do you mean? Lucas asked. Give me 48 hours. I need to talk to my intelligence team. The transmission ended. Diana looked worried. Can we actually win this? I don't know, Lucas admitted. But Peterson is smart. If there's a way to beat them at their own game, he'll find it. 2 days later, Peterson sent his plan. Lucas read through it and started laughing. What is it? Diana asked. Peterson found a loophole, a big one. He explained the plan to her. Diana's eyes widened. That's brilliant, and technically legal under their own rules. General Chen is going to be furious. Good, Diana said with satisfaction. The human fleet departed for the Outer Rim, followed by Zoral observers who would report back to the council. Everyone expected a prolonged campaign. The raiders were experienced and knew the region well. Even if humans fought perfectly by traditional standards, victory in 3 months would be difficult. But on the human flagship, Peterson gathered his senior officers. All right, people, he said. Here's how we're going to win this. We're going to follow every single rule they gave us. And we're going to make them regret it. Intelligence Officer Brandon Lee pulled up detailed scans of the raider territory. We've identified their bases and supply routes. We can't attack them directly without formal declaration. So we'll declare, Peterson said. We'll declare on all of them at once. Every base, every ship, every supply depot, one giant announcement that we're coming for everyone. That violates the spirit of the protocols, someone objected. But not the actual rules, Peterson replied. The protocols say we M. Commander Jake Peterson stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the countdown timer. In 10 minutes, humanity would begin its most public military operation since joining the galactic community. Zoral observers were stationed on every human ship, recording everything. The entire galaxy was watching. "All ships report ready," Lieutenant Ryan Foster announced. "Excellent," Peterson said. "Begin the broadcast." Throughout the Outer Rim region, every communication channel suddenly carried the same message. It was delivered in 12 different languages, ensuring every raider group would understand. "This is Commander Jake Peterson of the Human Fleet. Under authority granted by the Galactic Council, we are conducting anti-piracy operations in this region. We hereby formally declare our intention to engage and eliminate the following targets." A massive list appeared on screens across the region. Every known raider base, every supply depot, every ship that had been identified through intelligence gathering, 37 different targets, all named specifically. "You have violated trade laws and attacked peaceful vessels. You are hereby notified that human forces will engage you in combat. This message serves as our formal declaration as required by protocol." The transmission ended. On his bridge, Peterson smiled at the shocked Zoral observer. "We followed the rules," Peterson said. "We declared our intentions before attacking, just like the protocols require." The Zoral officer sputtered. "You cannot declare against every target at once. That is not how it is done. The combat accords say I must announce my intentions before engaging in combat. They do not specify how many targets I can declare against. I just declared against all of them." Throughout the Raider territory, chaos erupted. The Raiders had expected human forces to target one base at a time, following traditional siege protocols. They had planned to evacuate targeted bases and relocate ships, then set ambushes in designated combat zones. But Peterson had declared against everyone simultaneously. Now they had no idea where the humans would strike first. "All units, execute Phase 1, Peterson ordered. The human fleet split into 6 groups. Each group headed for a different raider base. They moved fast, using the superior speed of human ships to cover distance quickly. The first base was a converted asteroid facility that served as a repair depot. The raiders had begun evacuating when the human declaration was broadcast, but they were not fast enough. Captain Greg Harrison commanded the strike group that reached the base. "All ships, weapons free. Target propulsion systems and power generators only." The human ships opened fire with precise accuracy. They did not destroy the base or kill the raiders. Instead, they disabled the facility's ability to move or defend itself. Within 8 minutes, the base was helpless. Harrison opened a communication channel to the raider commander inside. "Your base is disabled. Your ships are trapped in dock. You have 2 choices: surrender and face trial under galactic law, or stay here and starve when your supplies run out. You have 10 minutes to decide." The raider commander was a scarred veteran who had fought for 20 years. He had expected honorable combat, a chance to fight and maybe escape. Instead, his base was crippled without a real battle. "This is not how war is conducted," the raider protested. "This is how humans conduct war," Harrison replied. "We win fast and move on. 10 minutes." The raider commander surrendered. Harrison left a small security team to secure the prisoners and moved on to the next target. Across the region, the same scenario played out. Human forces hit 6 bases in the first day. Not with overwhelming destruction, but with precise strikes that disabled without killing. The Zoral observers were stunned. "You are supposed to engage in combat, to test your strength against the enemy." "We are engaging in combat," Peterson replied. "We're just doing it efficiently. Why waste time on prolonged battles when quick strikes accomplish the same goal?" By day 3, 14 raider bases were disabled. The remaining raiders tried to group together for defense, gathering their ships in a fortified position near a nebula. This was what they understood: a major fleet engagement in a designated area, the kind of battle that would last days and give both sides opportunity to prove their skill. Peterson studied the raider formation on his tactical display. They had positioned themselves well, using the nebula's gases to hide their exact numbers and create sensor interference. "They expect us to attack head-on," Lieutenant Commander Amy Richardson observed. "Standard fleet tactics would require us to probe their defenses, test their strength, then commit to a full assault." "How long would that normally take?" Peterson asked the Zoral observer. 4 to 6 days for a proper engagement," the observer replied. "You must allow them to respond to each probe, adjust their formation, demonstrate their tactical skill." "That seems like a waste of time," Peterson said. "It is the honorable way," the observer insisted. Peterson turned to his communications officer. "Get me Specialist Jennifer Cole." Jennifer was the fleet's expert in psychological operations. She had been studying the raider groups for weeks. "Jennifer, what do we know about the raider command structure?" Peterson asked. "They're a coalition of 5 different groups," Jennifer reported. 3 are from the same species. 2 are mixed crews. They compete for resources and status. The alliance is fragile. "Can we break it?" "Already working on it, sir." Jennifer began targeted broadcasts to the different raider groups. The messages were simple but effective. She showed each group data on the others, highlighting who had suffered the most losses, who had lost the most bases, who had the most valuable remaining assets. "The Crimson Fang has lost 3 bases but still controls 2 supply depots," one message stated. "Why should they get equal say in strategy when the Iron Stars have lost everything?" Another message went to a different group. "The Council voted to fight, but your leader did not tell you that his private escape ship is already fueled and ready. He plans to run if the battle goes badly, leaving you behind." Jennifer sent dozens of messages, each one designed to create suspicion and division. On the 4th day, one of the raider groups broke away from the coalition. They had decided to surrender rather than fight a battle they could not win. The next day, 2 more groups withdrew. They did not surrender, but they refused to participate in the planned fleet battle. The remaining raiders tried to maintain their defensive position, but their formation was breaking apart. Ships argued over tactics. Commanders questioned each other's loyalty. Peterson watched it all unfold. "Still think we should have attacked head-on?" he asked the Zoral observer. The observer had no response. By day 9, every raider base was either captured or abandoned. The remaining raider ships were scattered and disorganized. Several groups had already fled the region entirely. The mission that should have taken 3 months was effectively over in less than 2 weeks. Back at the Galactic Council, General Vera Chen was furious. She called an emergency session. "The humans did not fight," she declared. "They used trickery and deception. They disabled bases without proper siege warfare. They turned enemies against each other instead of engaging in honorable combat." Ambassador Lucas Grant stood before the council with Captain Diana Hayes beside him. "We followed every protocol you specified," Lucas said calmly. "We announced our intentions before attacking. We engaged enemy forces in combat. We achieved the mission objectives." "You violated the spirit of the Accords," General Chen insisted. "We followed the letter of your laws," Lucas replied. "If the spirit was different, perhaps the laws should be written more clearly." Council Speaker Thexal raised his arms. "The humans are technically correct. They announced their intentions. They engaged in combat. They eliminated the raiders." "In 9 days," Diana added. 3 months ahead of schedule. "With 0 casualties on our side and minimal casualties among the raiders. Most of them are alive to face trial for their crimes." "That is not the point," General Chen said. "Then what is the point?" Lucas asked directly. "Was the goal to eliminate the raiders, or was the goal to have a prolonged battle? If it was the former, we succeeded brilliantly. If it was the latter, then you were never interested in actually solving the problem." The chamber fell silent. The truth was uncomfortable. Many warrior species did prefer prolonged conflicts. It gave them opportunity to prove themselves, to earn glory, to justify their military budgets. But they could not say that out loud without admitting that the human accusations were correct. Ambassador Drell of the Hevian Confederacy spoke up. The Hevian Confederacy moves that humanity be recognized as having fulfilled the challenge successfully. They followed the protocols and achieved the mission objectives ahead of schedule. Several peaceful species seconded the motion. Even some warrior species grudgingly agreed. The vote passed. General Chen looked like she wanted to argue further, but she had no legal ground. The humans had won by following the rules perfectly, but she was not finished. The Zoral Empire has another proposal. Several coalition members have joined us in this. We believe humanity's military methods pose a threat to galactic stability. Lucas felt tension rise. What kind of threat? Your methods undermine established military traditions. If other species adopt them, chaos could result. Therefore, we propose that humanity be restricted in their military operations. You should be required to seek council approval before engaging in any combat operation. It was an attempt to neutralize human effectiveness. If humanity had to get permission for every action, they would be bound by the same bureaucracy and tradition that made galactic warfare so inefficient. That is unacceptable, Lucas said firmly. Then you reject the authority of the council? General Chen challenged. We reject any restriction that does not apply equally to all species. If you want to require council approval for military operations, make it a universal rule. But I do not think the warrior species here would agree to that. Lucas was right. The Tarveen, Zoral, and other military powers would never accept restrictions on their own operations. They wanted to limit humanity without limiting themselves. The proposal died without a vote. But the debate had revealed something important. The galaxy was dividing into two camps, those who saw human methods as a threat to tradition, and those who saw them as an opportunity for change. That night, Lucas met with Diana and Commander Peterson through a secure channel. They are going to keep trying to stop us, Diana said. I know, Lucas agreed. But we have momentum now. Other species are starting to question why they fight wars the old way. Peterson looked thoughtful. The Tarveen and Zoral War is still going on. 112 years and counting. What if we offered to mediate? They would never accept, Diana said. Maybe not officially, Peterson replied. But what if we approached their civilian populations? Showed them what peace could look like? Let them put pressure on their own governments? Lucas considered it. It was a bold idea. Also dangerous. But everything humanity had done so far had been bold and dangerous. If we are going to change how the galaxy approaches warfare, we need to prove it can work on the biggest conflict, Lucas said slowly. The Tarveen-Zoral War is the perfect target. It is also the most dangerous, Diana warned. Both empires have massive militaries. If we make them angry enough, they could unite against us. Then we better make sure we succeed, Peterson said with a grin. The formal request for mediation was rejected within hours. The Tarveen Collective and Zoral Empire both sent identical responses. They had no interest in human interference in their conflict. The war would continue according to tradition. Ambassador Lucas Grant had expected this. So had Captain Diana Hayes and Commander Jake Peterson. They had already prepared for the alternative approach. If the governments will not listen, we talk to the people, Lucas said. The campaign began quietly. Human diplomats did not approach Tarveen or Zoral officials. Instead, they reached out to civilian groups, merchants, farmers, factory workers, teachers, the ordinary citizens who paid for the war with their taxes and their children. Mediator Daniel Ross led the effort. He was a specialist in conflict resolution who had helped end several disputes on Earth. His team included cultural advisor Julia Bennett, who had spent months studying Tarveen and Zoral societies. Their first broadcasts went out on civilian communication channels. Simple messages, no political demands, just questions. Do you remember why the war started? One message asked. The original dispute was over mining rights to 3 asteroids. Those asteroids have been empty for 70 years. Why are you still fighting? Another message showed economic data. The war costs your empire 8 trillion credits per year. That money could build schools, hospitals, infrastructure. What are you actually getting for that cost? The messages did not demand peace. They just asked people to think. At first, the governments tried to suppress the broadcasts. But human communication technology was difficult to block completely. The messages kept getting through. In the Tarvine capital, a factory worker named Grek watched one of the human broadcasts with his family. It showed footage of soldiers dying in battle, compared with images of what the war spending could build instead. I lost my brother in the war 10 years ago, Grek said to his mate. They told us he died defending our territory, but we did not gain any territory. What did he really die for? Similar conversations were happening across both empires. People were starting to ask questions that had been unthinkable before. Questions about whether the war actually served any purpose beyond keeping military leaders in power. The Tarvian government responded by increasing propaganda. They held rallies celebrating military victories and warrior traditions. General Krell gave speeches about honor and duty. But the human messages kept coming, patient and persistent. Economic advisor Stephen Clark coordinated the next phase. He began offering trade agreements to individual Tarvine and Zoral colonies, not as part of any political deal, just straightforward commerce. We have resources you need, Stephen explained to a Tarvine colony administrator. You have products we want. Why not trade? Your war with the Zoral does not need to affect our business relationship. Some colonies accepted. Within weeks, trade routes were established. Tarvine and Zoral citizens, who had been enemies for generations, found themselves working together on human-brokered deals. A Zoral merchant sold manufactured goods to a human trader, who then sold them to a Tarvine distributor. The transaction violated no laws, but it created connections that had not existed before. General Vera Chen of the Zoral Empire recognized the danger immediately. She called an emergency military council. The humans are undermining our war effort, she declared. They are not attacking us directly, but they are destroying support for the conflict from within. What can we do? One of her subordinates asked. They are not violating any treaties. They are simply offering trade and asking questions. We need to stop them, General Chen insisted. But she had no clear way to do so without appearing tyrannical to her own people. The Tarvine leadership faced the same problem. War Master Krell wanted to declare humanity an enemy, but that would mean starting another war. And polls were already showing that Tarvine citizens were tired of endless conflict. The human campaign continued for 3 months. No grand battles, no dramatic confrontations, just steady, patient work building connections between ordinary people on both sides. Then the breakthrough came. A group of Tarvine and Zoral civilians arranged a meeting on a neutral station. They did it without government approval, organizing through channels that human mediators had helped establish. Daniel Ross attended as an observer. He watched as Tarvine farmers met with Zoral merchants, as teachers from both species discussed education systems, as parents who had lost children to the war shared their grief. We have been told you are monsters, a Tarvine mother said to a Zoral father. But you seem like me. You love your children. You work hard. You want peace. I have been taught the same about your people, the Zoral father replied. But I see now that we are not so different. The meeting lasted 2 days. At the end, the civilians issued a joint declaration. They called for negotiations to end the war, not the traditional kind of negotiations that had failed 16 times before, but real talks aimed at lasting peace. The declaration was signed by 10,000 civilians from both empires. Within a week, That number grew to 1 million. Within a month, 50 million. The governments could no longer ignore the pressure. The Galactic Council called a special session. Ambassador Lucas Grant stood before them with quiet confidence. The Tarvine and Zoral governments have agreed to peace negotiations, Council Speaker Thexal announced. They have requested that humans serve as neutral mediators. There was shocked silence in the chamber. A war that had lasted over a century was actually moving toward peace. "How did you do this?" Thexal asked Lucas. "We did not do anything," Lucas replied honestly. "The Tarvine and Zoral people did it themselves. We just gave them the tools to communicate and showed them what was possible." Lieutenant Commander Rachel Foster, who had compiled the data on the campaign, presented the results to the Council. Civilian contact initiatives reached 2 billion individuals across both empires. Trade agreements were established with over 300 colonies. Support for continuing the war dropped from 70% to 28% in Tarvine territory, and from 65% to 19% in Zoral space. "You manipulated public opinion," General Chen accused. "We provided information," Lucas corrected. "We showed people the costs of war and the benefits of peace. They made their own choices." The negotiations began 2 weeks later. Daniel Ross led the human mediation team, working with Julia Bennett and economic advisor Stephen Clark. The talks were difficult. Generations of hatred and suspicion did not disappear overnight. Military leaders on both sides fought to preserve their power and budgets. But the civilian pressure was too strong. The Tarvine and Zoral people wanted peace, and their governments had to respond. After 6 weeks of intense negotiation, an agreement was reached. The war would end. Disputed territories would be divided fairly. Joint economic zones would be established. Military forces would be reduced gradually over 5 years. When the treaty was signed, celebrations erupted across both empires. People who had lived their entire lives during wartime could barely comprehend what peace meant. General Vera Chen attended the signing ceremony, but she looked angry. Afterward, she confronted Ambassador Lucas Grant in private. "You have destroyed something that existed for thousands of years," she said. "The warrior traditions, the military culture, the honor system, all of it undermined by your methods." "We ended a war that was killing billions," Lucas replied. "If your traditions required that war to continue forever, then those traditions needed to change." "You think you have won," General Chen said coldly. "But there are many species who still value the old ways. We will not forget this." Lucas met her gaze steadily. "I hope you do not forget. I hope you remember that there are alternatives to endless conflict. That wars can be ended without either side being completely destroyed. That peace is possible if people choose it." General Chen left without another word. Back at the council, the session that day was unlike any in recorded history. The speaker stood before the assembled representatives and announced the formation of a new department. "The Galactic Council hereby establishes the Department of Conflict Resolution," Thexal declared. "Its purpose is to prevent wars and mediate disputes before they escalate to violence. Ambassador Lucas Grant of Humanity has agreed to serve as its first director." Not everyone was happy with this decision. The warrior species saw it as a threat to their way of life, but they could not deny the results. A war that had seemed eternal was over, ended not by superior firepower, but by patient diplomacy and civilian engagement. In the following months, more changes came. Several species requested human assistance with their own conflicts. The methods that had ended the Tarvine-Zoral War were applied elsewhere, with similar success. The Corveth Union and other warrior cultures formed a military alliance in response. They called themselves the Preservation Front, dedicated to maintaining traditional warfare customs. General Chen was one of their leaders. Lucas was not surprised by this development. Change always faced resistance, but he was not worried either. "Let them preserve their traditions," he told Diana. "As long as they do not force those traditions on others, We can coexist. Commander Jake Peterson proposed an alternative for warrior species who still valued martial prowess. He worked with General Nathan Price to establish competitive war games, simulations where military skills could be tested without actual bloodshed. Give them an outlet for their warrior culture that does not require killing, Peterson explained. Let them prove their strength in contests instead of wars. Surprisingly, many warrior species embraced this idea. They created elaborate tournaments, strategic competitions, and military exercises that satisfied the need for martial achievement without the cost of real warfare. Officer Amanda Wright helped establish the first multi-species military academy. It taught both traditional combat skills and human conflict resolution methods. Students learned how to fight, but also when not to fight. 6 months after the Tarvine-Joral peace treaty, Captain Diana Hayes gave a speech to the graduating class of the academy. War is not glorious, she told them. It is brutal, wasteful, and tragic. Every soldier who dies is someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. Every battle destroys resources that could have built hospitals or schools. Every conflict creates hatred that lasts generations. She paused, looking at the young cadets from a dozen different species. But war is sometimes necessary. When peaceful options fail, when innocent lives are threatened, when aggression must be stopped. That is when soldiers are needed. When you fight, fight smart, fight fast, fight to protect, not to conquer. And always look for ways to end the conflict and return to peace. The cadets listened intently. They represented a new generation, one that understood both the necessity of strength and the value of peace. A year after humanity first joined the Galactic Council, Commander Peterson stood on the surface of New Terra. The colony had grown rapidly, with beings from multiple species living together peacefully. He watched human and alien children playing in a park. They ran and laughed together, unaware of the species barriers that their parents had been taught to respect. His communicator buzzed, a message from a distant sector requesting human assistance with a border dispute between two minor powers. Peterson smiled. The work was never finished. Conflicts would always arise, but now there were alternatives to endless warfare. He sent a reply, accepting the assignment. Lucas Grant stood in his new office at the Department of Conflict Resolution. The walls displayed data on ongoing disputes across the galaxy. His team was already working on a dozen different situations. Diana entered the office carrying reports. The Preservation Front is conducting military exercises near our trade routes. General Chen is making a statement. Let them, Lucas said calmly. They have the right to maintain their traditions. As long as they do not force conflict on others, we have no quarrel with them. Some council members are worried they might attack us, Diana said. They will not, Lucas replied with confidence, because they know we will not give them the traditional battle they want. We will use economics, diplomacy, and public opinion. We will make war too expensive and unpopular for them to sustain. They learned that lesson with the Tarvine and Zoral. Diana nodded slowly. You really think we have changed things permanently? I think we have shown the galaxy that there are options, Lucas said. Whether they choose those options is up to them, but they cannot claim ignorance anymore. They know that wars do not have to last forever, that conflicts can be resolved without maximum destruction, that peace is possible. He looked out the window at the stars. Humanity had been among them for such a short time, but they had already made their mark. We did not rewrite the rules of battle, Lucas said quietly. We reminded the galaxy of something they had forgotten, that the goal is not to fight wars well, but to avoid fighting them at all. That true strength is not measured by how effectively you can destroy your enemies, but by how well you can turn enemies into partners. Diana stood beside him, looking out at the same stars. Do you think it will last? The peace we helped create? Some of it will fail, Lucas admitted. Conflicts will arise. Some species will return to old ways, but others will remember, and each generation will have a choice. They can follow the path of endless warfare like their ancestors, or they can choose something better. That is all we can really do, Diana said. Give them the choice. And show them that choosing peace is not weakness, Lucas added. That it takes more courage to solve problems without violence than to simply fight. That the hardest battles are the ones you win without firing a shot. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the galaxy turn. Humanity had come to the stars expecting to find advanced civilizations with wisdom beyond Earth's understanding. Instead, they had found societies trapped in traditions as old as time, unable to imagine alternatives to ways that had always been. And in showing the galaxy those alternatives, humanity had given their greatest gift. Not technology or military might, but the hard-learned lesson from Earth's own bloody history. That war should never be the first choice, or the easy choice, or the choice you make because it is traditional. That peace is always worth fighting for, even when the fight requires patience instead of weapons, understanding instead of force, and the courage to choose a better path when the old path is all you have ever known. The galaxy was learning. Slowly, with resistance and setbacks, but learning nonetheless, and humanity would be there to help, for as long as it took, because that was what they did best. Not winning wars, but showing others how to avoid them. That was the real revolution, the one that would echo through the stars for generations to come. Lucas made his decision. Contact both governments. Tell them humanity offers mediation services. If they refuse, we go directly to their people. The transmission ended. Diana looked at Lucas with concern. This could backfire badly. Everything we have done could have backfired, Lucas replied. But it has not, because we are right. War does not have to be the way they do it. Conflicts can be resolved faster and with less suffering. If we can prove that with the biggest war in the galaxy, everything changes. And if we fail? Diana asked. Then we fail trying to save billions of lives, Lucas said. I can live with that. Outside the window, stars glittered in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Tarvain and Zoral forces were killing each other in a war that most of them did not even understand anymore. A war kept alive by tradition and institutional momentum. Humanity was about to show them there was another way. Must announce our intentions before attacking. They don't say we can't announce everything at once. Analyst Nicole Martinez looked impressed. That will cause chaos. The raiders won't know where to defend first. Exactly. And while they're confused, we hit them with everything we have. Fast, coordinated strikes on multiple targets. We'll be following the rules. We just won't be following them like the Zoral expect. Peterson looked around the room. The galaxy thinks they understand warfare because they've been doing it the same way forever. Time to show them that understanding the rules isn't the same as knowing how to win. His officers grinned. They understood now. Humanity was about to give the galaxy another lesson, and this time, they would do it by following every rule perfectly. About half want to throw us out of the galaxy. The other half are curious. Lucas allowed himself a small smile. But they can't deny our methods work. Peterson's already getting more requests, Diana said. 4 different species want human assistance with their conflicts. The Council won't like that. The Council will have to adapt. Lucas nodded slowly. Humanity had proven something important. There were alternatives to traditional warfare, faster, cheaper, and more effective alternatives. The question now was whether the galaxy would accept change or cling to old ways. Either way, humanity had made its mark. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for it. Diana stood by the window, looking out at the massive space station where the Council met. They think they understand war, because they've been doing it the same way for thousands of years. Then we'll teach them something new, Lucas said quietly. Outside, stars glittered in the darkness. Somewhere out there, Commander Peterson was preparing his fleet. The Korvax raiders had no idea what was coming. Neither did the rest of the galaxy. Humanity was about to rewrite the rules of battle forever.